about the changes happening to playgroups in Humboldt County? You may have heard, you may be directly impacted, one of the leaders at one of the playgroups or families, or you may not know what I'm talking about. So today's episode, we are going to be diving into the topic of playgroups. First Five Humboldt, I think, is most known for the playgroups that we fund throughout the county, for our navigators that visit each playgroups, our family support navigators that do amazing work connecting with families, connecting them to resources, providing developmental screenings and answering questions, and just being a great point of connection for folks. Our playgroups, unfortunately, are experiencing a change that will take effect pretty soon. We have playgroups all over the county, and due to funding cuts, we are having to cut back on some of the playgroups that we fund. And so today we're going to be diving into what that means, what that looks like, get to hear from our really fun and amazing guests, our family support navigators directly. And we are also going to get a chance to speak to our executive director, Marianne Hansen, so she can give us a little bit more of a background and a deeper dive into how the funding works and why the cuts are happening. I hope this podcast episode is informative. Let's go ahead and dive right in. We had Rosa, Mary, and Letty, but I'm going to go ahead and let them introduce themselves. So we want to start with you, Rosa. Can you introduce yourself and maybe give us a little bit of background on the work that you do and why First Five?
Hello, everyone. My name is Rosa Guerrero, and I'm a family support navigator with First Five Humboldt. So me and the girls, we do work predominantly with the playgroup families. So we go out to playgroups. There's 23 of them, and we split them between the three of us. Humboldt County is a very diverse community. It's very large. So we serve a very diverse demographic of people. We provide parenting education, referral information. We do community engagement. We plan community events. We do a lot here and there. For me, and the reason why I'm here at First Five Humboldt, I'm really passionate about early childhood education. I studied child development at Cal Poly Humboldt. I have history working in early childhood settings. I grew up with my mom. She had a family child care home. So I really like working with this age group, and I feel really passionate about supporting families with young children. I think there's a lot of hope in there and a lot of intervention that you can do. So that's the reason why I'm here.
Thank you, Rosa. Mary, say hello, and tell us about why First Five or the work you do. And even before being a First Five playgroup navigator, you already work with playgroups. So let's say hi, Mary.
Hi, everyone. I'm Mary Douglas, and like Karina said, I have been working for playgroups outside of being a navigator. I've worked at the Manila Playgroup for a couple of years now, and before that, worked with children for many years. And I have a degree from HSU in child development as well. And I also brought my kids to playgroup. So that was a big part of why I got interested in working for First Five, because they were so beneficial to myself and my children. And kind of along that vein, something that brought me to working with children in the first place was to be the adult that I needed as a child. But now it's kind of to be the support system that I needed as a new parent. And I really love working with parents and children in this role.
Thank you, Mary. Leticia,
Hi.
say hi. Let's hear about a little bit about you and why playgroups and what you do.
Hi, my name is Leticia Padilla. I am a family support navigator, like these ladies. Communities that I work mostly are from in the South, from starting in Eureka all the way to Redway. At the beginning, before Rosa was part of the team, I was mostly covering communities where there's more Hispanic families. Now it's incredible, but we have that diversity and many diversity and pretty much on all the 23 playgroups that we have. I am in First Five because I really was curious about what First Five did to begin with. I am, as a parent, I used to go to playgroups and took my daughter there when she was little, but then I was just always questioning, like, what does First Five do besides just playgroups? And I'm very happy and honored to be working here because I realized in the trauma-informed approaches that we have related what is family protective factors, resilience, and all these other I realized the trauma-informed approach that First Five has when it comes to talk with families, it's important for me. And it's something that has always been, I've been passionate about.
Yeah.
How would you describe playgroups to somebody that hasn't ever heard of playgroups or has been to playgroups? What are playgroups and what do family support navigators do?
Playgroups I found as such an incredible collective of families where you can find not just support, emotional support or parenting support, but you can also see through the guidance and of our leaders and the family support navigators, find this strength than you have as a parent, as a new parent, et cetera, et cetera. I feel like most parents, when you have a young child, they don't have that support. And I feel like playgroups are encouraging and empowering parents to let them know them, no matter how type of education they have, they are doing the right thing. And you need some support, community support.
So you guys have the role of family support navigator. What do you feel like your role being at playgroups is?
Since I'm a very social person,
Mhm.
for me, it's first connection.
Mhm.
I love to go and connect with families, make them laugh, make them feel comfortable at play group. And then through that, I'm able to do what actually the job description asks, which is do child development screens, um, guide them in where to find resources, create this a collective of friends and parents, putting parents together, make them meet each other is one of my favorite things because I can see how new parents or mostly parents that just arrived to town, to the city, I can see them walking on the playground or like making dates to go and do this. And that is so relieving for me.
Thank you, Letty. Very good. Yeah. And I feel like you brought up such a great point, especially for parents that are new to the area. I mean, you move to Humboldt and you're just like, what is this quirky little place? Like, what are these communities? I mean, we have 23 playgroups currently all over the county, and each one of them has a unique community. And for those that don't understand, and we'll actually have our wonderful executive director, Marianne Hansen, at the end of this conversation to talk to us a little bit more about playgroups and the funding crisis, I want to call it, that's happening. But can you give us a understanding, like a brief understanding of what are playgroups? Because some people, I think, associate playgroups like they're entirely first five and that's it. They're first five playgroups. And yes, and
Yeah. And thank you for bringing that up. So, playgroups are run by leaders who are community members that see a need or want to promote this. And they partner with a community organization like a school, an FRC, a city, and that generally provides the space for these playgroups. And then they get a grant from First Five that funds that playgroup partially. So the host organization matches that, generally speaking. Playgroups generally meet once or twice a week for generally about 2 hours. And the beginning of it, people are free to come and go as they need to, but it's pretty open play-based. And children can explore the toys and the activities. And then often playgroups end with a closing circle with songs and story. And like I said, people are free to come and go as they like. Yeah.
Thank you so much for that, Mary. The world of grants usually has a lot of moving parts. So to go back to that understanding of playgroups and what they offer, how would you describe playgroups? Outside of the grant specifics, what do playgroups provide for folks?
So I see playgroups just very much like Letty said, is this social connection and gathering place. It's pretty healing for a lot of folks to come and find their people, find their community. And we don't have a lot of gathering spaces that are intentional like that. So it's beneficial for the children to be able to come and play in a safe environment that's set up for them. But it's also really beneficial for the parents to know that their children are safe while they build relationships with other adults and get experiences with parenting styles, learning from other people, maybe seeing something that they don't want to do, getting all of those hands-on life skills that are so important to see other parents parenting, because you can read all the books, and there's wonderful books out there, but seeing it hands-on is such an important part of playgroups. Also, getting connected, like Letty was saying, that especially folks that are out of the area, getting connected with the resources here. There's not as many as in other areas, and playgroups can be kind of a hub for those resources.
Yeah. Thank you guys. I feel like you guys touched on such great points. One, it's a place for connection. Two, I mean, there is not a lot of spaces out in the community that you can bring a young child to. And that is the magic of Playgroup. They're safe. There's activities set up for young children. There's people like you guys, support navigators, that are there to answer questions, to build relationships. And there's leaders that run these playgroups amazingly. But here, we also know protective factors play a huge role in parenting and community care. And playgroups are really rooted in protective factors and what that means for the family system and connections and the overall health of the family unit. So what are protective factors? What are we talking about? And how can we frame this idea?
We have 5 protective factors: parental resilience, social connections, knowledge of parenting and child development, concrete support in times of need, and social and emotional competence. For me, I will say the one that makes more difference is parental resilience.
And kind of like it's an analogy to use, and I found a really good one online that I liked. They described it as anchors in a storm. And so they're what strengthens individuals and families so that they can weather challenges and build resiliency. So life is unpredictable and adversity is inevitable. Those are things that we don't have control of. But having strong protective factors means that difficult experiences don't have to define us. There are opportunities for growth, healing, and connections, and stuff that helps buffer some of the negative effects of those adverse experiences.
Thank you. Yeah, I'd love for everybody to know that playgroups are really rooted in what protective factors are meant to accomplish for our communities. It has just highlighted the importance interviewing like our local pediatrician, interviewing our local therapist, and now talking to you guys directly. We're working with families, that it is so important when the caregiver feels supported and feels like a sense of strength, and that they know resiliency and how that impacts the family system. And so I've just appreciated that just keeps getting highlighted in all aspects from our work here at First 5 Humboldt and in the community. Mary, do you have anything else that you feel like you want to share about like protective factors and playgroups? And also, I'm curious, what strengths do you see in families you work with that they don't always recognize themselves?
Oh, yeah. I think that social connections is a really big part of the resiliency that playgroups building those social networks, and relying, kind of building a village so you can rely on other caring adults. And also the friendships last for years. You hear about people saying that they made friends with someone in playgroup and they're still going strong, 20 years later.
Yeah.
It's a big life change when you have kids, and it can be a little bit challenging to find new friends and a new group and new activities because you have kids now. Here in Humboldt, we have a culture that really relies on one another because we've had to. That culture is kind of resilient because there's been boom and busts in this county for so long. I think it's really amazing right now that people are acknowledging what has gone wrong for so long, or those struggles. But I think that we don't give ourselves enough credit here for being so creative and ingenious about how to come together. We lack resources, but we're very strong in building community and networking. And I think that people don't give themselves enough credit for that, and people recognize it when they move here. They can see that community and they feel at home because that's what we cultivate here. Part of the protective factors is concrete support, and we not only offer supports like WIC and CalFresh, educating people on those resources, but also developmental screenings. So we can help families and caregivers learn more about child development, and maybe if their child if they have some concerns, we can help them pinpoint that, and we provide screening throughout playgroups. We offer that to
all children as 0 to 5, and we try to promote that on the regular so that that becomes just the norm, and that we can help reduce some of the stigma around screening and being able to provide early intervention, because we know early intervention can go a long way in families' lives and children, and that they can catch up much faster if we can catch things early on. And that's something that the navigators specialize in.
That is such a great thing about the navigators visiting playgroups, is that you guys are trained and you guys can have these conversations around developmental screenings, curiosities that come up. I know that there's a lot of fear that comes up with these topics, but knowing that you have like a friendly face that you can just have a conversation with, and it doesn't mean that there's a consequence that's going to happen or an action that's going to be taken, but like you're curious and you're able to just have these conversations. And it's so nice that you guys offer so much support to our communities. You guys are so lucky because you get to see all the different communities. I want to really highlight the importance of playgroups for people that haven't attended them. I'm curious if you guys could share with us like what you've seen come out of playgroups. Like, how have families benefited from connection and support? How have they become more resilient? What does this do for our community?
And I think like something we commonly hear is that playgroups save people's lives. You know, they talk about experiencing postpartum depression, feeling really alone and not really feeling understood. And like going to playgroup and like being able to connect with other parents, you know, also having a difficult time, you know, even just like building the routine of getting up every day, you know, some of them like they built playgroup into their day. And just like building that consistency of going to playgroup helps them come out of that, you know, low stage, and helps them like connect them with resources or even activities to do around the community. So I feel like it's a lifeline for many. I can also think of situations where they provided almost like opportunities for people get more curious about their child's development. Like maybe there were some concerns that maybe their child wasn't speaking yet or wasn't walking yet. But by seeing, you know, other children at a playgroup interacting, you know, similarly aged children at playgroup, they were able to get more curious and be like, oh, I wonder what else I could do to get my child, you know, talking like that other child, or, you know, even starting that conversation with the navigator of, oh, what is an ASQ? Yeah. Or, you know, what supports are available for my child. And, you know, even like connecting with other parents about that how that process looks like, because we do have a lot of children that are RC clients there. Just like recently, I saw some RC vendors come and work with a child at playgroup. They were doing speech therapy with them. So they're very accessible settings where like parents can share information. And they're one of the few settings that are really accessible to children 0 through 5. Right. I feel like those are very limited in stores in our communities.
If I have to explain to the community what is a playgroup, it has to be stuff that it's a safe place for you to come and relate to other parents that are in the same situation of you, dealing with what is to be a parent.
Yeah.
And to add on to that safe space, it feels like each group kind of takes on its own life, and these families come together and they celebrate their highs and they can share their lows, and that trust that builds between the families is a protective factor in itself, but just so beautiful to witness people going, you know, grieving. That can be very isolating to be in grief, but when you can do it in a group and you feel cared for and like people are holding that space for you, even though you are still trying to parent through that, that can be so incredibly difficult. And it's just remarkable that people want to, they seek out playgroups so that they can be with people, but also celebrating the success, like their children learning to talk when it has been a struggle, and we can all celebrate that together. So it kind of takes on its own life and a family kind of.
Yeah, reminded me of something. So the other day I was out in McKinneyville, and there was a little girl that was taking her first steps, and like I could feel like the whole room stopped moving, and like everybody was observing the little girl. And like they started clapping for her at the end. And that was beautiful to see, because I knew all those families were familiar with the little girl and they were all celebrating her successes together. Oh, that
makes me cry.
So yes, that's how we see it. and every day, like Mary and Rosa pointed, it's wonderful to be able to be part of play groups as a navigator, as a parent, as a leader, because we have the opportunity to celebrate all together.
Yeah. And playgroups are, like we mentioned, and you have been mentioning, and we'll continue to mention, a safe space for not only caregivers, but kids 0 to 5, which we know are the most important years of development. And I mean, we champion those early years for so many reasons, but having safe spaces for kids to develop and to connect, and for caregivers to connect within this age, is so important. So we, as First Life Humboldt, are funded multiple different ways. We are grant funded, which we try to get grants, and that makes our work accessible to the community. It makes us be able to do different programs. Like we have our Help Me Grow program, Welcome Baby. We do a lot of work with childcare providers. Our funding also primarily comes from Prop 10. Prop 10 funding has been declining because tobacco use has been declining. Unfortunately, there has been some cuts that have to be made. And right now we have 23 playgroups, but we are going to only be able to fund 12 playgroups. So, I mean, I say this with a lot of sorrow, and I say this understanding that it's hard for all of First Life staff to know this and to kind of work through this, but it's especially difficult for the navigators because you guys see the community, see the leaders, and understand the impact. One of you want to share what the reduction of playgroup funding mean and how it impacts the families and the communities you serve?
Well, I feel like the impact is gonna be huge. Like we've been mentioned into this interview, playgroups are an investment in health and children's health and families' well-being. And so reduce these spaces, it's gonna hurt in so many levels. It breaks my heart in the sense, me, I'm originally from Bolivia, and playgroups have done a lot of good things for me. As an immigrant, when I came here years ago, I used to visit them. I have great friends since then. And it's always been a curiosity, why do we don't have the government or like authorities or people who takes these decisions to invest in programs that are 0 to 5 when we all know now, like many years of study, how important is this age group?
As we know, our resources here are very limited. So this just feels like another stab at our limited capacity here. And I know that it's really hard for families to have this taken away. In a big sense of it, we kind of prevent, this is too dramatic, but child abuse.
Yeah, in a way, yeah. I mean, and it's when you talk about this, Karina, you notice our body language, we most directly go emotional and almost tearful because we acknowledge how like playgroups are reducing isolation in this community. Then it's so diverse and so dispersed, rural areas. So it gets emotional for us, I think, because we get connected with our families, with 3 ladies, and more than us, more than 3 of us, all our 24 leaders and our support. It's heartbreaking because we see how good we can be doing, like providing this space to serve a community who need it.
So what do you guys want community members or decision makers to really understand about this space, and how can listeners support these kind of environments that help families thrive?
Early intervention and early childhood education is, to put it crudely, the biggest bang for your buck. So we see the most impact in the early years, and it would be wise for government agencies to recognize and make that investment. And across many studies this is shown, but also just our own surveys, what we hear time and time again is that families want more playgroups more often and longer hours.
Yeah.
We see every year, that's what we hear. So this is a huge need in our community and one that is going well right now, and people want more of it. So if you're going to be using tax dollars, this is a great opportunity to be serving your constituents.
Yeah, absolutely. And also they understand that play groups are not just places for children to play. They are powerful foundation for family well-being. In playgroups, we find caregivers find connections, learn about child development, build confidence, and access to support before a crisis even happens.
Now, I think this conversation definitely needs the voice of our executive director to really kind of help us understand our First Five funding structure and why playgroup grants are being cut in the way that they are. Our executive director is somebody very well known in the community and probably needs no big introduction. She is definitely one of those movers and shakers, and she has continued to try to find funding for First Five, and she really strives to keep the First Five mission and vision going. So we're so grateful to have her here to help us understand what's going on with playgroups, how communities can show up, and help wrap up this conversation of playgroups.
Hey, Karina, thank you so much for having me. I'm Marianne Hansen. I'm the Executive Director of First Five Humboldt, and I've been the director since 2015, and looking forward to talking with you a little bit more.
I think because you've been with First Five and you understand how we operate, it would be so nice if you could help our listeners and the community understand how First Five is funded, what Proposition 10 is, what does that mean, and how the funds are typically allocated and how that relates to playgroups.
Yeah. So I feel like this is the boring stuff. Like we like to talk about how children and families develop and all the good things that go on in the community, but there's that background infrastructure about how it all happens. So First Five Humboldt has been around for more than 25 years. In 1998, the voters passed Proposition 10, which taxed each pack of cigarettes sold in California 50 cents and established a state First Five and a First Five in each county. First Fives were designed in statute to work across systems and across agencies to serve pregnant people, children under 5, their families, and their communities. And so it's pretty unique actually that among well, let me back up and say First Five is the only state mandated agency that is required to work across systems to build better systems for families. And it's voter approved. And so I feel like that gives us a really clear message that we're here to serve children and families despite silos that families might encounter. So that tax on tobacco products is collected by the California Department of Tax and Fee Administration. And then after they apply their administrative fees, then First Five California receives 20% of that tax, and the remaining 80% is divided among the counties based on their birth rate. And so First Five Humboldt has 0.268%, so 0.00268 of the state's total births. And so that's the proportion that we get of those tobacco taxes.
So how does funding for First Five play a role in playgroups? So, the navigators and I briefly talked about how the structure of playgroups are grants that then get matched by a partner organization or, the location. It could be Parks and Rec or the city. What is leading to, the reduction of funding, and why is it impacting playgroups specifically?
Yeah, so First Fives across the state are facing a pretty steep revenue decline. In 2016, when voters passed Proposition 56, which added an additional $2 on every pack of cigarettes sold. So that led to a steeper decline than we had experienced before. But then in 2022, voters validated the legislature's ban on flavored tobacco, which at that point, menthol cigarettes accounted for about 30% of cigarette sales in California. And so that is, I just have to say, that's fantastic for Californians' health, right? It absolutely is important to reduce addiction, especially among our youth. We don't want them to get hooked on flavored vaping, right? So that's a really good thing, but it has this unintended consequence of really reducing the revenue that First Five Humboldt receives and First Fives across the state. And so what it used to be was a 3 to 5% decline that we accounted for every year. But since Prop 31 in 2022, it's been a 40% decline in our revenue. And the projections we received last month showed that it would be another 10% over the next 4 years. So beyond that 40%. So it's a super steep decline. So since 2017, First Five and that passage of Prop 56, First Five Humboldt has steadily decreased our expenditures to match that revenue, trying to balance our budget. 10 years ago, we gave out grants to dozens of programs in Humboldt County. Now we're down to only 2. The library, which has already received a pretty steep cut 2 years ago and is facing another one next year, and playgroups. Playgroups are sort of the last thing that we've avoided cutting to try to balance that budget. And we've used funding from the county ACEs project to backfill. You know, people might go, why all of a sudden? Well, we were using county ACEs money to backfill that decline to keep playgroups at their same rate, and we just can't sustain it any longer. So especially given that the money from the county is really, really uncertain because of their own deficit. So even though our revenue has been declining, we've tried to protect Playgroup and keep it from any kind of cuts. In fact, after COVID, we expanded it a little bit just because there was a huge outpouring of requests from the community. And even though our birth rate, which determines the taxes we get, even though that's declined by 1/3 over the last couple of years, playgroup attendance is still just as high. So there are only 2/3 as many kids under 5, but playgroup attendance has stayed at, we had more than 15,000 visits to playgroup last year. So it's important to us. We want to keep it, but we've kind of, we have reached that point where we just can no longer sustain that level of support. And we've looked for grants. We've looked for grants that could still help us serve our community's children, but we haven't yet found a grantor that wants to fund something that's existing in the community.
Thank you for giving us all those specifics. I think it makes sense for folks to feel upset and to feel angry and to feel like they don't understand. And oftentimes when cuts happen, we kind of put a lot of blame and we put a lot of guilt on the organization, and we say, well, you don't care. And with the conversation with the navigators, one thing that is so evident is that we are in this work because we care so much. Walking in our office and chatting with all of our staff and the community that we directly work with, that our passion is, advocating and really driving that mission and vision forward of healthy families, really advocating for young children. And I just want to say that because I think it's important for folks to know, in the office, you're kind of, unofficial title to many of us is the wizard of trying to find funding and trying to keep our mission going for so long. While experiencing real cuts that, across the county we can see. And so one, thank you for that. And also, what advice do you have for community members and community organizations that are seeing this impact? How can we keep, staying informed and advocating for early childhood programs? I think you do so much work in the advocacy field. So what kind of message do you have for community members?
First of all, I just have to acknowledge what you said about how important playgroups and the work that we do in the community is. One of the early conversations around cuts someone said to me, playgroups are beloved in our community. And I just, that word has just really stuck with me because I really feel like people, playgroups have helped connect. We've just got so many stories about how playgroups help see people through their postpartum depression or stress that their family was experiencing, some particularly difficult time, and how it helped them connect during feelings of isolation. Early childhood can be a super isolating time, and this is our heart work, right? This is important work. Since the beginning, First Five Humboldt has made one of its priorities being connection, right? Connection within the community. So, I can get stuck in talking about numbers and talking about in a logical way how we arrived at this, but that ignores just the really sad and grieving part that folks have come to rely on this resource, and we don't know how to sustain it. We've tried everything that we can think of to sustain it, and we're still trying. But so to your question, I think Humboldt is amazing. I think we have amazing families who are strong, who know what they need. We have just the very best agencies. When I go to other counties or go to state meetings and people talk about working together and what they're able to produce, people are always amazed at this connectedness within Humboldt and how sort of scrappy we are about, like, let's do what we can, come together. When I've presented to Rotaries or Kiwanis, people want to know, like, how can we help? People want to know, it's not something that First Five can hold a bake sale, right, and fix, but I do think that there's the drive within the community to talk within their partners about how to come up with solutions, because while we might be looking for $250,000 to fund Playgroup to keep it at its same level for next year, what the playgroups need is far less than that, individually. So I think talk to your neighbors, talk to your county council, your city councils, talk to your service groups, and do some problem solving. There are small grants available, like through amazing organizations like Humboldt Sponsors, and other funding organizations that might meet that, whereas there aren't too many $250,000 grants that could help plug the hole. Does that make sense? I'm not sure if that makes sense. Yeah. But I think that what gives me hope is just the amazing strength of our community. Because if it's beloved, then we should come together to keep it from going away if we can.
I think you really spoke to, as First Five, we're currently a county entity, and with that, we are definitely faced with a lot more restraints than individual playgroups who can reach out to the community or who the community can directly go to. And so that, while it might feel kind of like a point that we don't really love here, it is a point of strength for playgroups. Is just a great way for individuals and organizations to support this funding crisis or these funding cuts that are happening. And one thing that you kind of briefly mentioned is that although this is, the current state of things, and we are looking at grant cuts and playgroup reductions, our want and our research and our trying to find funding hasn't stopped. And we are continuing to try to find ways get this message out there right now. And this doesn't mean that our work and our love and passion for keeping playgroups going is stopping. So I just want kind of listeners to know that.
Yep. And we're not talking about playgroups completely going away next year. We're talking about a reduction from the current 21 to 12 that are funded by First Five Humboldt, but we're still looking, as you said, for that other 9 to find ways to fill that gap.
just to add a little bit of clarity, you might have heard the navigators and I saying 23 playgroups, and now Marianne mentions 21 playgroups. Last grant cycle, there was 23 playgroups, and this current cycle, there's 21 playgroups. So that's what that's about.
Now, you kind of already mentioned your hopes for supporting families with fewer resources. I mean, tapping into the community is a great one. Do you have any other thoughts for families or community partners who are concerned around this change?
I think that we need to speak out on behalf of early childhood. I think early childhood gets left behind all the time.
Yeah.
There is a system to support children TK through 12, and it comes with a right to attend the school that in whose district you live in, and it comes with behavioral health supports. It comes with speech therapy. It comes with all of these wonderful, it comes with free and reduced lunches, right? There are all these supports that wrap around. And if you need something, if you're 6 or 7 or 8 or 9, you can go to your school and they're going to point you in the right direction. But if you're 2 or if you're 6 months old, your family does not have a system to support you. They have first fives, which were only meant to support but not be an encompassing system. But first fives aren't funded in a sustainable way. We always knew that tobacco taxes were going to go away. And this is very much like the challenge with childcare, right? In Humboldt County, 84% of a single mom's salary, if she earns the median wage, will go to pay for childcare if she has an infant and a school-age child. So that's not sustainable for families. How are you supposed to be a single mom, work, and provide childcare? It's not reasonable. And so I think that our legislators need to hear that mamas and dads and babies need to be better cared for. We don't have a cohesive system. We have a stopgap where you leave first five scrambling to do what we can, but it's not sustainable. And so I think that that's the first thing that comes to mind, is that people need to speak up, whether it's at their city council meetings, to their board of supervisors, and most importantly to their legislators at the state and federal level, to say families deserve better, because we know that what happens in your first years sets the structure, the brain architecture for the rest of your life. I mean, it's one of the reasons that the ACEs science is so powerful and so scary, because if children don't get what they need in those early years, then we very clearly see the lifelong impacts of that. And we know that every dollar that you invest in early childhood saves you $13 or gets you $13 later on. And that is a better investment than at any other stage in life in terms of investing in human potential. So that's what my suggestion is watch for the ways where you can speak up about the importance of early childhood, so that our legislators find a solution, so they're not protecting youth from flavored tobacco at the same time they're cutting the only consistent system county to county for early childhood. What an awful choice. So that's what comes to mind for me, is speak up, gather together, make yourself heard, because I think young children and families get ignored too often.
Beautifully said. It's definitely our goal, and I think the goals of First Fives and First Five California, to keep pushing this to legislators, but what an impact it makes when we have community backing, community, families, mothers, fathers, all family structures directly saying, we care, we're here, we hear this. So advocacy goes far, and it kind of helps us remember that we have power. And even when things are changing and shifting and there's funding cuts, we are able to speak up and use our voice and say, hey, I see this and I care. I want to backtrack real quick. So I wanted to ask for listeners that might say, well, this doesn't make sense to me. Why are you guys running on tobacco tax? Why did you make that decision? What kind of answer can we give?
That's almost like an existential question. Like, why did Rob Reiner, who wrote, if you're my age, you know Rob Reiner from being an actor and a director, and why did he choose tobacco tax to fund early childhood? I mean, he wanted to put in place a system, I think at the beginning, that would result in universal preschool, and it didn't work out like that. It wasn't enough, and it wasn't sustainable. But it's easier to pass a tax that doesn't that people feel like is taxing people for bad things. So a sin tax. And so those are the easiest taxes you can actually pass. It's something where it's sort of othered. And so I think that in California versus other states, there's definitely a culture about cigarette taxes not being not being cool. And so it was an easy way to tax it, as opposed to forcing the legislature or the governor to provide some kind of dedicated something, like whether that was property tax or development tax, or we fund behavioral health by taxing incomes over $1 million in California. And that's been a pretty sustainable, in fact, increasing method of taxation. But for whatever reason, they chose tobacco tax, feeling like it was palatable, that it was something that was going to sunset. And I think that that's difficult, because in some counties in California, they say, we always knew it was going to go away. So, quit asking for more money, because you should have been planning for this. And we have been planning for this, but the job's not done. And that's what's frustrating to me. When we asked our commission, because originally the plan was to shut the doors in 2025. This was going to be the last year, because tobacco tax revenue, they knew, was going to be declining very steeply. And then they were going to, I don't know, send the remainder of the money to maybe a community foundation or something. But when we asked the commission in 2015, like, do you want to close the doors in 10 years? And they were like, the job's not done. We can't see if the job would be done in 10 more years. We still need to be out there fighting. And that's exactly what I see, that we need a more sustainable funding source, because the job's not done. So maybe it was the easy, expedient tax to pass in 1998, but it's left California families in a lurch, because they're losing services and they still need them.
Thank you for that. First Fives happened because, we saw that this work needed to get done. Voters recognized that this work, did need to get done. And in result, First Fives came to be and came to push that work. And that work's, like you said, it's not done. Thank you so much for coming on and giving that context. I know it's not a fun topic, and you are a wealth of knowledge and a great person here in the community to kind of tap into. So, not the most fun interview to do, but very needed. And I think our community is going to appreciate it. Any other final thoughts?
I think what's going to stick with me after chatting with you, Karina, is what you said about we have the power, right? We are powerful together. And I just think that's a really strong, beautiful sentiment to hold, like in this time where we might feel like we're worried about the economy, or we're worried about our family, or we're worried about our healthcare, or all of these things. But we are in a democracy, and when we come together and we raise our voice, we have power, and we all have an investment in the health of our children going forward. And so it's a great place for us to come together. So thanks for that sort of pep talk around, we have power. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
Right. I'd love to leave this conversation here, but for those that have made it to the end of the podcast and are listening right now, this conversation has been a difficult one for me to kind of take our team through, because we've had months of a lot of sorrow and heartbreak, honestly, from our team, who are so directly involved and impacted by these funding cuts. And it was so important to get on here and just kind of chat and give an overall idea of what does First Five have to say about this for the greater community that's heard about the funding cuts. And again, those points that we can push the message along so far, but we are way stronger when we are in community and do it together. For one message that I want to leave you guys with, which is I guess the message overall, is that even if we have restraints in our organization, connecting with your playgroups, talking with your playgroup leaders, asking questions. Can we help with funding, or how can we do this? How can we come together and, brainstorm solutions is very powerful. If you are interested in advocating and learning more about different early childhood initiatives in the state and federally, we have a new policy watch that we're doing on social media, where you can learn about policies and changes at the legislative level that could be happening and how you can get involved. So definitely keep a lookout on that. If you are curious and want to learn more about other early childhood policies and changes that could impact you and your families and your community, first5california.com is a great. First Five California is great, so you can go to first5california.com. The Child Care Law Center, childcarelaw.org, is another great place to go and get informed. mothersrising.org and 5cause.org are other great places to check out. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. And like I mentioned in the conversation with Mary Ann, kind of what we talked about is our goal is still to continue to fund all of our playgroups in whatever capacity we can. And so that work is ongoing. And I will definitely give you guys any updates as they come, whether it's in 3 months or in a year or 6 months, whatever that looks like. I'll make sure to keep you guys updated. Thank you so much for listening.